138 years ago, November 15, European leaders gathered around a horseshoe-shaped table to set the rules for Africa's colonization. It took them 105 days to reach an agreement. Their intention was not for altruistic, rather to grab African resources. Greetings, I'm Tabitha John, this is ETV World. In this program, we'll discuss about the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, the meeting at which 14 European powers negotiated and formalized claims to territory in Africa as their own property. Do stay with us. The Berlin Conference of 1884-1885 marked the climax of the European competition for territory in Africa, a process commonly known as the Scramble for Africa. During the 1870s and early 1880s, European nations such as Great Britain, France and Germany began looking to Africa for natural resources for their growing industrial sectors, as well as a potential market for the goods from these factories. Belgium's King Leopold II, who aspired to increase his personal wealth by acquiring African territory, hired agents to lay claim to vast tracts of land in Central Africa. To protect Germany's commercial interests, German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, who was otherwise uninterested in Africa, felt compelled to stake claims to African land. Inevitably, the scramble for territory led to conflict among European powers, particularly the British and French in West Africa. Rivalry between Great Britain and France led Bismarck to intervene. And in late 1884, he called a meeting of European powers in Berlin. In the subsequent meetings, Great Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, and King Leopold II negotiated their claims to African territory, which were then formalized and mapped. On the afternoon of Saturday, November 15, 1884, conference was opened by the Chancellor of the newly created German Empire at his official residence in Wilhelmstrasse in Berlin. The only clue as to the purpose of the November gathering of white men was to hang on the wall a large map of Africa, including a short break for Christmas and the New Year. The West African Conference of Berlin would last 104 days, ending on February 26, 1885. The Berlin Conference did not begin the scramble. That was well underway. It did something much worse, though, with consequences that would reverberate across the years and be felt until today. It established the rules for the conquest and partition of Africa, in the process legitimizing the ideas of Africa as a playground for outsiders, its mineral wealth as a resource for the outside world, not for Africans, and its fate as a matter not to be left by Africans. Daniel de Leon marked the conference as an event unique in the history of political science. Diplomatic in form, it was economic in fact. And it is sure that while it was dressed up as a humanitarian summit to look at the welfare of locals, its agenda was almost purely economic. A Nigerian journalist puts it as a forcible possession of our land has taken the place of a forcible possession of our person. Theodore Holley, the first black Protestant Episcopal bishop in the U.S., condemned the delegates as having come together to enact into law national rapine, robbery, and murder. Bottom of form, despite achieving independence for the most part in the 1950s and 60s, many African countries have continued along the destructive path laid out in Berlin. Former Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere declared, "We have artificial nations carved out at the Berlin Conference in 1884, and today we are struggling to build these nations into stable units of human society. We are in danger of becoming the most balkanized continent of the world. ethnicity and tribalism continued to be the bane of African politics. The immediate reason for the Berlin Conference was the jealousy of the king of a small country, Belgium, towards his cousin, Queen Victoria of Great Britain. King Leopold II of Belgium considered himself to be an important man. Yet in the 1870s, Leopold had no territory other than the small state of Belgium itself. His cousin, Queen Victoria, on the other hand, was not only Queen of Great Britain, but also Empress of India, and had a whole empire besides. This race for control in the Congo region was just one of many that were happening in the 1880s as Europeans turned their attention and efforts to violently conquering African societies. Soon they were edging towards fights with each other. The German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck saw this potential conflict as threatening his plans for Europe. It was for this reason that he invited European leaders to come to Berlin in 1884 to work out a policy for their expansion on the African continent. Big and unexpected challenge is ready to tackle their journey towards Ethiopia. Emperor Menelik II, in the middle one Africa leader who figured this out early, was Menelik II, future emperor of Ethiopia. In 1884, Menelik was not yet emperor, but was an important leader of his state. He knew about the conference, although neither he nor any other African leader had been invited. Menelik decided to write a letter to the European states at the conference in which he asked them to take Ethiopia seriously as a military and political power. He wrote, "I have no intention at all of being an indifferent spectator if the distant powers hold onto the idea of dividing up Africa. Since the all-powerful has protected Ethiopia up until now, I am hopeful that he will keep and enlarge it also in the future. And I do not think for a moment that he, God, will divide Ethiopia among other powers." In 1876, Belgium's King Leopold II announced his intent to fund an exploration of the Congo region. And in 1879, Leopold sent Sir Henry Morton Stanley to the area. In the same year, the French began building a railway east from Dakar, hoping to tap potentially huge Sahelian markets. That year, France also joined Great Britain in taking financial control of Egypt. France moved to occupy Tunisia, one of the last of the Barbary pirate states, under the pretext of another Islamic terror and piracy incidents. French claims by Pierre de Brazza were quickly solidified, with the French taking control of today's Republic of the Congo in 1881 and also Guinea in 1884. This in turn partly convinced Italy to become part of the Triple Alliance, thereby upsetting Germany's Otto von Bismarck carefully laid out plans with Italy and forcing Germany to become involved. Under support from the British and the initiative of Portugal, Otto von Bismarck, German Chancellor, called on representatives of European powers gathered in Berlin to work out a common policy for colonization and trade in Africa and the drawing of colonial state boundaries in the official partition of Africa. Major colonial holdings included Great Britain desired a Cape to Cairo collection of colonies and almost succeeded through their control of Sudan, Anglo-Egyptian Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, British East Africa, South Africa and Zambia, Zimbabwe, Rhodesia and Botswana. The British also controlled Nigeria and Ghana, Gold Coast. France took much of Western Africa, from Mauritania to Chad, the French West Africa, as well as Gabon and the Republic of Congo, the French Equatorial Guinea. Belgium and King Leopold II controlled the Democratic Republic of Congo, or the Belgian Congo. Portugal took Mozambique in the east and Angola in the west. Italy's holdings were Somalia, Italian Somaliland, and a portion of Ethiopia. Germany took Namibia, German Southwest Africa, and Tanzania, German East Africa. Spain claimed the smallest territory, which was the Equatorial Guinea. The issue, tabled 138 years ago, has still significant impact on the unity and solidarity of Africa and Africans. Those powers still want that legacy to persist under the umbrella of their extractive culture. Today, Africa is a continent of more than 50 sovereign states with a demography of 1.2 billion. Human and natural resources of this continent has its paramount and unspeakable, but the problem lies on utilization. By their misguided policy and big swindle, Africa is by far weak in utilizing it. DR Congo is the third largest producer of diamonds, and yet lacks peace and stability. Agenda 2063 of the African Union reiterates as a motto, African resources for Africa. To materialize it, democratically stable Africa, socially strong and integrated regional institutions, solidarity in all times above all, the principle of shared vision and goals across the continent. Africa's dawn is near. The beacon of hope, bright and better Africa, will become true by its envisioned leaders redressing divisive intents of the Berlin Conference. And that, ladies and gentlemen, wraps up this segment of ETV World. Make sure to follow and subscribe to our social media for more captivating content circling on national, continental, and international issues.